everyone. Welcome to the Rural Leaders Podcast, where we're interviewing leaders from across the spectrum of rural America, inspiring and equipping rural leaders to act in their local community. My name is Dana Peterson, and I'm joined by my co host, Richard Fordyce. Good afternoon, Richard. How are you today?
Dana, I am doing well. I hope you are. And I just I really like the lead in to the podcast. It kind of explains what the podcast is all about, and truly, rural America matters. Rural is relevant, and so as we navigate through the podcast with different episodes, as Dana indicated, we're going to bring rural leaders. For you to meet, and in some cases for us to meet, to understand what's going on in their communities, and what are great things that are happening across our rural areas of the country.
Yeah, and it's great. You're in your dining room in Missouri. I'm in my dining area in Kansas. And it's our hope that these conversations are comfortable, like friends gathering around the dining room after Sunday dinner. And so, thank you all for joining us today. Getting good feedback about the content as well as the people that we've had the opportunity to have conversations with really are bringing some great things for people to think about, but also to implement in their local communities. Have you been getting some feedback too, Richard?
I have, Dana, and it's interesting that what we want this to look like is a conversation around the dining room table. And believe it or not, Dana, I'm literally sitting at my dining room table. Um, and it is. It's been a lot of fun to have folks, say that they've caught an episode, and they really thought, that the guest was compelling and had some good points, and wanted to learn more about maybe a topic that was brought up during the podcast. And certainly, we know that will continue to happen. And as Dana said a minute ago, we're getting a little bit more comfortable doing this. We're not broadcasters. I'm a farmer from Northwest Missouri, and I know Dana's a farm girl from North Central Kansas. And but this has been a great journey. It's been a lot of fun, and it's gonna keep getting better. So great feedback from the folks that I've talked to, and just looking forward to what's next.
And I think our guest today is going to be a ton of fun as well, right, Richard?
Yeah, he is. So our guest is a farmer and an entrepreneur from Elverson, Pennsylvania. You're going to meet him here in just a minute. But he's got an interesting perspective on rural life and farming and entrepreneurial endeavors. And so we're going to meet him here in just a minute. He also had the opportunity, or not the opportunity, to work with Dana and I in Washington in the last administration. So we're going to hear a word from our sponsors, some real important news from them, and then we're going to introduce you to our guest for this week's podcast here in just a minute.
My name is Blake. I received a heart transplant when I was 2 weeks old. I play defense for the Red Hot Tornadoes. Sometimes my heart starts pounding like faster and faster as I go. I know I have someone else's heart inside me. It makes me feel happy because someone was generous enough to give me a second chance to live.
This gift of life was made possible by an organ donor. Imagine what you could make possible. Sign up as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. Go to organdonor.gov.
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text-to-emoji ratio?
Oh man, the selfies.
Selfie, nailed it.
We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Craig, come on man, let's split a ride home.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Rural Leaders Podcast. And as we teased right before the segment, we've got a great guest. We're going to try to get over several topics with our guest, but farmer from Elverson, Pennsylvania, Bill Beam. And before we get into questions, Bill, I want to just say I met Bill. Gosh, I don't know, 12 years ago, maybe, when we both served on the United Soybean Board as directors. And Bill and I hit it off right off the bat. Fast forward a number of years, I found myself in Washington, D.C. as the administrator of the Farm Service Agency and needed some help in farm programs. And I knew that position needed to be a farmer. And I called Bill. And it's funny because when I called him, he had lost his phone and he didn't even know who called him. But he did, ultimately, he did agree to come. And he worked with Dana and I for a good bit of time there in Washington. And I think, we were great friends going in and obviously stronger friends coming out. So, Bill, welcome to the Rural Leader Podcast.
Well, thank you, Richard, and good to see you, Dana, also. This is all true, what you said, and if I remember right, I'll never forget the first night I met you and Renee. I actually got snowed in St. Louis, spent an extra night there, got to chatting with you and Renee, and I remember you had been in, I think it was Top Producer or a magazine on the front cover. And I still remember going home and telling my wife, I said, you know what, this is going to be a pretty cool deal because I just met a celebrity. So, of course, our history goes on from there. But it's been great knowing you and Dana, and I wouldn't trade any experience for the world. Maybe one or two, but 99.9% of them have been awesome. Yeah, so thank you for that.
Yeah, there may be a couple we might want to rewrite. So I think what's interesting to begin with, and Dana, can I ask the first question?
Yeah, please go ahead. Mm-hmm.
The first time I went to your place, I was just struck by, and I know we're going to have listeners that are in a similar place that you are. But about where their farm is located, close to a metropolitan area. But you are farming in the shadows of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I know that's got to present some challenges, but I would guess it also presents some opportunities too. Could you talk to us just a little bit about how that is to farm that close to Philadelphia?
Yeah. So, you're right. It does present some challenges, and Pennsylvania is not exactly known for wide roads either, but that's a side note. I actually have a farm where I can see the skyline of Philadelphia, literally, when we're driving to the fields. So that's how close we are. My home base is about 30 miles from Philadelphia proper, but I will say the city has moved way out beyond that 30-mile city limit, so to speak. And it's literally, in some ways, urban sprawl is all around me. And in fact, in my lifetime, you mentioned challenges. In my lifetime, I started farming in the mid 80s. I have lost over 1,000 tillable acres to various forms of development. Well, whether it's houses, roads, golf courses, schools, you name it. I've actually, lost it because of my closeness to the cities and the people, and it's a huge challenge. So a lot of times you don't know if you're going to have a piece of land from one year to the next. And in fact, this year when we were planting, I had probably 500 tillable acres that we literally would call the landlord and say, look, the planters are in the area. Are we planting it this year? Or are you going to build houses or whatever the case may be, warehouses? It's everything above. So that's a challenge. And in fact, the boys are thinking about buying a new planter. And the discussion is always, do we make that kind of an investment when we don't know how many acres we're going to be farming next year? So, and that's not to mention the traffic. A lot of areas have lost this support. And I know you all have also in the Midwest, but every town doesn't have a dealership for John Deere or Case IH or a fertilizer dealer anymore, because they have less and less acres. So I'm in a declining area. I think that's the biggest challenge for us, to answer your question.
Yeah, so welcome, Bill. It's great to have you with us. And I know in my own life and from hearing stories from you that sometimes those challenges have given you opportunities to do some unique things with your farm and to maybe try some things that maybe someone without those challenges wouldn't try. So, give us an idea of some of those things that you've adopted for your operation and your business that have, been spurred on from those challenges.
Mhm. Yeah, so there's definitely advantages to it. And when I graduated from college, if you all, you're all too young to remember this, but the '80s were a tough time for agriculture, if you remember. And I was looking for a job, and a gentleman approached me, and he had a sawdust business that he wanted to sell because he was moving out of the area and could no longer service the business that he had started. And so my business, so I bought that business, I should tell you. But what that entails is we pick up sawdust at various plants. So places that you all might recognize, like Ashley Furniture, Ames True Temper, kitchen cabinet manufacturers, lumber manufacturers, pallet manufacturers. There's a lot of manufacturing in my area, and let's be honest, there's a lot of wood that's grown, a lot of forest products that happen here in Pennsylvania. So we started that business. I bought a list of names, and we sell them to, dairy farms, but we also have a large equine market in this area. So, you know, and let's face it, it's mostly hobby. And I would say, to answer your question, I have directly benefited from living in the suburbs of Philadelphia, shall we say. And we have gone all the way to Long Island with sawdust, because there's dollars in this neighborhood. I'm 30 miles from Philly, I'm 120 miles from New York City, and I'm 120 miles from Washington, D.C. So there's with that comes some expendable dollars, and we've been able to capture a little bit of that.
So, Bill, I do remember the '80s. My first operating loan was 1983, and it was 19% interest. I remember that very vividly, uh, which was obviously the start of the farm crisis. But anyway,
Mhm.
just a little bit more about where you are. So I know I've been to your place multiple times. You are the definition of rural. But I think I heard you say one time that within a radius of maybe 200 miles, how many people live there? Like you're in a rural area, but you are awful close to a lot of people.
Yeah, and I heard that number, and I tried to double check that, but a very large percent of the population in the United States is within a 1-day drive from my farm. So that gives us and my neighbors the advantage of being able to maybe harvest produce and ship fresh produce to Boston, New York City, Baltimore, all the cities, because we're so close. And I've never got into growing vegetables. A lot of my neighbors have. Lancaster County is just to the west of me. They grow a lot of vegetables out there, and a lot of people like to come out there for, I call it agritourism, and they spend a day in
Yeah.
Lancaster County and go buy pumpkins or whatever the case may be, and then go to a corn maze. So there there's a lot of people. and I don't want to say a number and misquote, but I would say we have 25 to 30% of the people in this country probably within a 1-day drive of my farm. So that says advantage and disadvantage, like I just said. One of the disadvantages of that, just to spin off, is the cost of land. I had a friend that was trying to buy a piece of land the other day. I think it's about 100 acres. And he said that the bid on that farm just went north of $200,000 an acre. So now that's going to go for an industrial use. I think they want to build a warehouse on it. But it was a feed mill that he was hoping to build. So he's going to lose that probably. And agriculture land in my area is also selling for upwards of $40,000 an acre. So the chances to expand because of all these dollars and people are almost I won't say zero, but it's tough, really tough.
Definitely. Now, Bill, I also know that you're really passionate about preserving farmland, and you've used a lot of different tools to keep land in agriculture. I think we were all in DC when COVID hit and the food um, crisis or logistics crisis and all of the things that have come since then has, I believe, raised the public's awareness of the necessity of keeping our food supply going. So, how are you trying to preserve land in agriculture and in food production?
Yeah. Yeah, so that is a passion of mine. And let's not forget Ukraine, something else that happened recently. So food security is really, really important. And so I have preserved, our family owns about 800 acres, 550 of them being here in Pennsylvania. And we have preserved almost every single acre. And what that means is most of my land is preserved with grants from the state and the county. And what they will do is they will pay you the difference up to a certain dollar amount for what your land is worth as a farm and permanently in agriculture versus development values. So my home farm where I'm sitting today was owned like industrial. It's pretty valuable. I went ahead and preserved it anyway, and took a loss to do that just simply because, we're farmers and we're passionate about farmers. And quite honestly, I have a lot of landlords that are also very passionate about preserving open space and land. And so we have a sort of a unique area, if you will, in this area or town that I live in, Elverson, where we have a lot of preserved land. So the benefits of preserving land, I think, really get overlooked a lot of times. And by that, what I mean is, so I have a farm, and I take my home farm here. It's 140 acres. If I build houses on it, let's say there's 100 homes on here. My farm never asks for police protection, extra police, extra fire protection, extra schools, trash removal. We don't have any streets inside my farm that need to be plowed. So there's really a benefit or cost savings, if you will, to the community. But what I do for the community is, I run a business out of here. I employ people. I grow things. I grow food for people. I also, as part of our, which we would do anyway, as part of a farmland preservation's agreement, we have conservation plans on our farm. So that means we're protecting the soils. We have nutrient management plans. And with that comes a whole host of other things, such as protecting our waters, our vistas. When we drive down the road, you can look across a wheat field today, and you're not looking at, urban decay, if you will, which I think is something that is also taken for granted in a lot of areas. So for me, preserving farmland is probably one of the most important things we could do. I also think that we need to be looking at it in other parts of the country. You may not have development pressure today, but if you get back to my story where I lost over 1,000 acres already, it's just a matter of time to Chicago, St. Louis, whatever town it might be, grows out into your farm. And then when those farms are gone, they're gone forever. So I think it's ultra important. I think that we need to tell the story of what we're actually doing for the community, so people actually realize. And I didn't even get into the latest buzzwords that we've been talking about, and that's all the carbon that's sequestered in my soils. So there's a lot of good things going on when you drive by a farm that people don't even think about, besides raising corn, wheat, and soybeans.
That's exactly right, Bill. There's a lot going on, and I know there have been groups, for almost decades, that talk about the rural lifestyle, the rural way of life, agriculture, and the things that come along with that. And I know that you are a great ambassador, and I've got to think that whether it's farmland preservation, your location in the shadows of Philadelphia, and just the captive audience that you have, there's got to be opportunities to share those rural values, those rural things that we hold to be very important with folks that don't know about that. And I know there's a number of people that they want to get out of the city on the weekend or on a holiday and experience rural Pennsylvania. And so I mean, you can speak to it or not, but I know that you have lots of opportunities to be an ambassador for rural Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Well, that's something. So I have the gift of gab, if you will, and I always enjoy the opportunity to tell people about agriculture or my farm or whatever's going on. I mean, it goes all the way back to our days when we were on the soybean board in USEC and all that. But like just recently, I had a landlord that invited me to speak about open space and preserving land. So we had a group of people that are actually interested in that. Might necessarily not understand how agriculture works and all the challenges, if you will, that go with it, but it gave me an opportunity to speak one-on-one with them. I've spoke at various events, and I very seldom ever turn them down because I genuinely enjoy going out there and meeting and talking to people. Probably the best opportunity is when you're driving down the streets in my area. You can get a combine or a sprayer, and you can read people's lips, and there's like, what is that? They have no idea what a combine is, and then they get their phone out and start taking pictures of us, and so there's a lot of work to do. We have a lot of story to tell, and it's going to be a continuing process.
Yeah. So as you've told those stories to people who maybe don't know about agriculture, what are some of the lessons you've learned in telling the story of agriculture?
So the lessons I've learned, that's a great question. So I think one of our challenges as farmers and ranchers across the country with social media now, there's a lot of misconceptions about what we're doing out there. And by that, what I mean, whether it's fertilizers, herbicides, GMOs, medicating our poultry or our cattle or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of misconceptions out there, quite honestly. And I find that when I'm able to actually talk to people on a one-on-one basis I can explain to them that the fact that we are no-tilling, we're actually using less herbicides now here in my area than we were before, because we're not constantly stirring up that new seed base, if you will, and bringing them to the top. So I think that we just need to get out there and tell the story, and it needs to be people. We need to educate ourselves as farmers, but we also need to tell the story because we really have a good story to tell. And we're not out there buying chemicals because we want to buy chemicals. We're doing it for a reason, and more often than not, they're going to benefit from it just like we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is great. And I know when we talked before we came on here with the podcast, there's some other things that you we're going to share, but we're running out of time. We will have you back again to learn more about what's going on in Pennsylvania. But before we get out of here, Bill, I know listeners will probably want to get a hold of you, reach out, maybe ask a question or two. How can folks get in contact with you?
Mhm. Yeah, so we have a website at just Google Beam Farms, Pennsylvania, Elverson, Pennsylvania. It'll pop up. So you can reach us there, or you can email me. Look for me on Facebook. We also have a site, Beam Farms, on Facebook, and I'll give you my email address. It's bill@beamfarms.com with a dash or a hyphen between my last name and the word farm. So shoot me an email. I love to talk agriculture. Well, what am I saying? I like to talk. So be open to chatting to as many people as possible. So, anyhow, but it's been this has been great, Richard and Dana. Thank you.
Yeah. It has been great.
This has been, it has been. It's always good to see you, my friend. So we're going to let you go for this time, but don't be waiting by the phone, but we will be calling and try to have you on again to see what's going on there. So as we leave this segment and as we leave our guest, Bill Beam, we want to say thanks to Bill and his input and his discussion and our conversation today. And we'll be right back after a word from our presenting sponsor.
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the Rural Leaders Podcast. I hope you enjoyed our time with Bill Beam and talking about farming and being a member of the rural community, literally outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I knew it would be a good visit, Dana. I knew we would get to some things that would be interesting to a lot of people. Like, he was talking about, maybe 25% of the country lives within a day's drive of his farm. I have 8,500 people that live in my entire county.
Yeah, we have 3,500 in my entire county, and you have to drive a long ways to get to a metropolitan area. So it is very enlightening to spend time with people like us, but not like us too, who are dealing with other challenges that we don't necessarily deal with. One of the things I really enjoyed about what Bill had to say was just the appreciation that a lot of people do have for the rural landscape, for our food supply, and for really listening and hearing the stories of agriculture. You know, living in DC for a while, there were lots of people I knew that would drive up to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania for the weekend, and it is beautiful country up there. And so I think it's really good to be able to preserve that landscape for not only our generation, but many, many generations to come.
It is, you know, and it is. You are absolutely right. It is beautiful country, and Bill didn't get into it. And maybe next time we have him on, we can talk about the historical significance of that part of the country. And I won't spoil it if he wants to talk about it later. But just from
Yeah.
an agricultural perspective, they're some of the most beautiful barns I have ever seen in my
Yes.
life. And some of those are, gosh, what are they? 200 years old. Um,
Yeah.
and you know, the farmland preservation also, I think Bill would tell us that is also encompasses some of those historic farm structures and maybe farmsteads. And you are exactly right. People love to see those things. They want to know they're
Hmm.
still there, and they want to see them, and they want to know that they're going to stay there. And anyway, I thought that was a great visit.
Yeah, and I just love the opportunity to visit with farmers and people in agriculture who are taking every opportunity to tell the story of agriculture, to share the importance of domestic food supply, and to really, you know, learn about how we supply food for the rest of the world, which is especially important with the crises that are going on in our world today. So it was a great segment or episode with Bill. Look forward to our next episode here in a couple of weeks. We are talking with friends and colleagues and other leaders from around the country, and we invite every one of our listeners to send us your ideas for people to bring on the podcast. People can contact us through email at dana@theruralleaderspodcast.com or Richard at theruralleaderspodcast.com. And we look forward to getting those recommendations, connecting with those leaders, and bringing them on the show. Thank you all for joining us today. I look forward to listening and learning more about rural leaders in our next time together.